There is a winding road in Beverly Hills called La Collina, which was actually a driveway for a magnificent estate over 100 years ago. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. In 1879, Benjamin R. Meyer was born in San Francisco, but he came of age in a rural area of Southern California, a dusty, pastoral region where sheep still outnumbered people. Meyer entered the wool trade and married into it. His father-in-law was a Prussian-born Los Angeles merchant named Caspar Kahn, who had arrived in California in the late 1850s and spent the following decades building up one of the largest wool trading operations on the West Coast. Kahn was a partner of his uncle Harris Newmark, an investor in the development of Montebello, a founding director of what became the Southern California Gas Company, and the founder of a small Jewish hospital in Boyle Heights that would eventually grow into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Kahn also had a side business he had not entirely intended to start. The Baskin French shepherds whose wool he bought tended to travel light, and they got into the habit of leaving their profits in Kahn's keeping until they needed the money. Eventually, the California state banking authorities informed Kahn that if he was going to keep other people's money, he was going to have to do it with a charter. And so in July of 1914, Caspar Kahn and his two sons-in-law, Ben Meyer and Milton Getz, opened the Caspar Kahn Commercial and Savings Bank in LA. By the end of the first business day, they had 63 accounts and just under $70,000 in deposits. Meyer was named vice president, and 2 years later, in 1916, Caspar Kahn died and Meyer stepped into the presidency. Within a couple of years, the brothers-in-law had renamed the institution Union Bank and Trust Company. Through the 1920s, as Los Angeles expanded at a rate that defied every prior model of American city-making, Union Bank expanded with it, with Ben lending money primarily for new construction. It was by any reasonable measure exactly the right moment to build a house. Meyer and his wife had been planning their Beverly Hills estate since 1920. He bought the land well in advance of breaking ground, several acres of hillside above Sunset Boulevard in a district that was still raw and only half built, and he took his time choosing the team. The land itself made the choice interesting. The parcel was just over 7¾ acres, which sounds generous until you notice that it was really a long, narrow ribbon of steep hillside that others hadn't bothered to attempt developing. A conventionally minded architect would have hated it. Meyer instead hired a 35-year-old Englishman named Gordon B. Kaufman, who had only recently joined the Los Angeles firm of Johnson, Kaufman and Coate, and for whom La Collina would be a first major residential commission. For the grounds, Meyer hired Paul G. Taney, one of the first truly professional landscape architects to practice in Los Angeles, whose assistant on the project was a young man named Lloyd Wright, the eldest son of Frank Lloyd Wright. The style they settled on was decidedly Italian, which was not the obvious choice in 1923. Most of the Grand Beverly Hills estates built up to that point had been Spanish colonial revival with their red tile roofs and their wrought iron grills and their vaguely missionary air. Meyer and Kaufman wanted something different. They wanted a Mediterranean villa that looked as though it had actually grown up out of the California hillside, not an imported quotation of Europe, but a native Southland thing, built for a Southland climate on a Southland slope. Immediately inside the gate stood a 2-story Italian gatehouse, small and picturesque and quite plainly doing double duty as a residence for the estate's gatekeeper. The driveway ended in a paved motor court with a central fountain facing the L-shaped stucco villa. The more workaday service wing containing the kitchen and the staff's daily domain was given a low, rustic character and was crowned with an open second-story patio that echoed the rooftop loggias of old Italian farmhouses. Before we head inside, let's take a quick look at the floor plan. And while we do so, I'd like to say a special thank you to our members for making this video possible. If you would like to help support our research and the creation of these videos, join the membership program today. Inside, the house unfolded around a central hall. The entrance hall gave onto a stair hall of carved wood and wrought iron with a curving staircase rising to the second floor. The living room opened off the hall through an arched doorway, and Kaufman, always attentive to the small graces, placed a short flight of steps at the entrance in order to accommodate a change in ceiling height, so that you descended slightly into a room whose proportions felt instantly more generous than the hall you had just left. The same trick was used at the entrance to the library, which flanked the living room on the other side. All 3 principal ground floor rooms, living room, library, and dining room, open directly onto terraces that overlook the gardens, Beverly Hills below, and on clear days, the distant Pacific. The dining room was paneled and formal, fitted out with tapestries and oriental rugs. Furniture throughout the house came from the Los Angeles decorating studio of Marshall Lard and chosen personally by Kaufman. The octagonal breakfast room at the garden end of the house was the showpiece of the interior. Kaufman commissioned the Italian decorative painter Giovanni Bismeraldi, a master in the Pompeian and classical Italian manner, to paint the walls and ceilings of the room in delicate Pompeian motifs. The real theatrics, however, were reserved for the gardens, and they were considerable. From the living room terrace, the land stepped downhill in a long sequence of outdoor rooms. The first of these was a long formal garden terminating in a pool that Taney had deliberately designed to read as a reflecting pool rather than as a swimming pool. A border of iris and low-flowering plants was set right at the water's edge, so that the foliage spilled gracefully over the coping, softening every hard line. At the far end of the pool stood a classical pavilion, backed by a row of 10 dressing rooms and equipped with a small kitchenette, so that the Meyers could host garden parties without anyone having to trek back up the hill. A vine-covered pergola ran along one side of the garden. Beneath one section of the pergola, Kaufman carved a private theater into the hillside itself, a room equipped with a full projection booth, terrace platforms, and a maximum capacity of 65 people. Beneath the projection room, hidden from every possible view, Kaufman tucked the estate's heating and ventilating plant along with a pump used to lift water from the swimming pool up to an irrigation reservoir on the hillside above. Between the pool and the theater, Taney laid out a rose garden, entered from the main pool terrace through another set of wrought iron gates. A second outdoor room, called the casino, was connected to the main gardens by a tunnel that ran beneath the pergola. Above the house, deeper into the canyon, and all but invisible from the main drive, sat a full stable group. Meyer was an enthusiastic amateur horseman who raced heavy harnessed ponies, and the stables were designed as a picturesque little village of buildings tucked into a natural fold of the ground with a riding ring laid out nearby. And knitting it all together was an elaborate electrical and communication system that was, for a private house in 1924, genuinely startling. The grounds were wired with a complex system of lighting standards, each of them arranged so that the festival streamers could be plugged directly in for evening parties, and an intercommunicating telephone system linked points across the estate. La Collina was finished in 1924 and was immediately awarded a Certificate of Honor by the American Institute of Architects. Ben lived in La Collina through the 1920s boom, the crash of 1929, and the grinding decade of the Great Depression that followed. Union Bank survived it all. After Franklin Roosevelt's March 1933 bank holiday, Union was among the banks judged sound enough to reopen its doors. Meyer himself became, over those years, one of the most widely recognized civic figures in Los Angeles. He went fishing with Winston Churchill off Catalina Island in 1929, hosting the future British Prime Minister on a trip during which Churchill caught his first marlin. In 1941, the Meyers, together with Milton Getz and his wife, made the decision to sell their two neighboring estates, reportedly to protect the depositors of Union Bank, and relocated to more modest houses. Then, Ben passed away in 1957. La Collina's life as a private estate ended in 1941. The Meyers sold the whole property to an investment group, and over the following decades, the estate was carved up and redeveloped with single-family homes. The main villa survived, though not unaltered. So did the two-story gatehouse that had once greeted visitors at the foot of the hill. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about La Collina? Let me know down below in the comments section, and while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.